Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Tuesday, December 31st. Before we get into today's play of the day, a quick recap of what happened yesterday. We ended up picking up a win in the NBA with the Utah Jazz minus 9.5, which we got at minus 110 on FanDuel. Looked like a bit of a sweat early on in the first half. Utah shot about 33% from the floor. Then the second half started, and Detroit's offense continued to struggle with the absence of Blake Griffin and some other key contributors, and Utah ended up winning the game by over 20. So it was a pretty easy winner. Didn't really need to sweat at all after the third quarter, and we'll look for another winner here on Tuesday. Now, I know that there's a lot of bowl games going on today, but overall, didn't really like any of the bowl games in particular in terms of a point spread or a total from a value perspective. But I do like one play, and it's kind of rare because I haven't given out that many hockey plays so far this season. Usually we've been switching off between football and basketball, but there's one play in particular in hockey that I do like today that does possess some value, and I will be giving that out as the play of the day. And it will be in a matchup between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes, and we actually like the total in this matchup, which is available at over 6 at minus 115 on DraftKings. First of all, that value in itself is worth it, as pretty much all offshore is at minus 120 or higher, and plus some other books have already moved to 6.5. I think this will move to 6.5 market wide before first puck drop. So I think that there is currently value at this number, so we'll be giving that out as play of the day. Main reasons why: both teams really solid in offense so far this season. Montreal and Carolina are both averaging over 3.27 goals per game. Plus, Montreal struggled defensively this season as they have given up 3.26 goals per game. So they typically play in a lot of games that are pretty high scoring. But both teams recently have had very high scoring games. Each of their last 4 games, Montreal's last 4 games and Carolina's last 4 games, have all totaled at least 6 goals. And if you've looked at each of their last 3 games, they have each totaled at least 8 goals. So both teams have been playing no defense lately. Both teams have been scoring pretty easily lately. And both teams are also averaging roughly 29 shots per game. So I think you should see both goalies who have been struggling get peppered a little bit with a lot of shots. And I think this game should go over the posted total. Speaking of goalies, it's worth mentioning that Carey Price everyone knows, is an elite goalkeeper for the Montreal Canadiens. However, he is not going to be playing tonight, and instead, Charlie Lindgren will be getting the start this season. If you've never heard of him, he'll be making his season debut here. He ended up starting in 16 AHL games this season, as he ended up going 7-6, 7-6-2 actually, with a 2.67 goals against average and a .893 save percentage. But so far in his NHL career, he has played before in 18 games, and he is 8-8-2 with a 2.89 goals against average and a .912 save percentage. The main reason why I think he's going to struggle in this one is because of the fact that the Canadiens, I mentioned before, have given up at least 4 goals in 3 of their last 4 games. So I am a bit concerned with this team and how they've been playing defensively, and I think starting a cold goalkeeper who has not started a game in the NHL this season is not exactly a good recipe for defensive success in that game. Meanwhile, Carolina's already announced they will be using usual starter Peter Mrazek in this game. Even though he's 15-8-2 overall, which is very solid for a record, he's struggled lately, and he has given up 4 goals in each of his last 3 outings with a save percentage of .854. So he's struggled a lot lately. He also played the Canadiens earlier this year, gave up 3 goals in that game. First meeting between these teams ended up totaling 7 goals, as that game ended up going to a shootout. You also have overtime draws at 3-3, similar to the first game for this over. But at the end of the day, both teams defensively have been an absolute mess, and the Canadiens will be using a relatively new goalie that is not Carey Price, so I'm a little bit concerned with his ability to stop this very potent Carolina offensive attack, especially on Carolina's home ice. So for me, I think this game should total at least 7 goals. This game will be close. I think you're looking at a push minimum. And for that reason, the play of the day will be on the over 6, which is available at minus 115 on a matchup between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes. And that game will be taking place at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, switching gears, talking about some of the leans on the college football card. I'll start out with the Florida State and Arizona State game. I will lean to, who do I like in that game? It's kind of tricky because Florida State has some issues with the coach, as they ended up hiring the Memphis head coach instead, so that's kind of an interesting dilemma there, as he's not going to be coaching this game, but then you have to wonder how much the players are actually going to care because of the fact that there was a brand new coach going in with a new system anyway. Arizona State, though, it is worth mentioning, has been pretty solid this season with Herm Edwards. They were better earlier in the year, but they ended up struggling down the stretch, but they were able to beat Oregon in a massive upset as they were able to get the job done. It's worth mentioning that both teams will not be at 100%, though, because of the fact that the starting running backs for both teams will not be playing in this game. Eno Benjamin and Cam Akers for their respective teams have already declared for the NFL draft, and both of them will not be playing. So I'm a bit concerned with how both teams will be able to perform without their main ball carriers, but I will lean to Arizona State minus the 3. Money has come in on Florida State lately. I would have leaned to Florida State at 4.5, but now that is currently at 3, I have to lean to Arizona State here. At the end of the day, I just think Daniels is the better quarterback in this matchup, and Arizona State, I think, is the better coach team. Florida State's using an interim coach in Odell Haggins, and I am just a bit concerned with how motivated this Florida State team will be in a matchup against Arizona State here. Lean to Arizona State. I think this game should be close. Money has come in on the under as it has gone from 56 to 53. Makes sense. Both teams are missing their best playmakers on offense. But for me, I'll lean to Arizona State minus a 3, and that's pretty much all my thoughts for that game. Moving on, you have Navy and Kansas State. And in this game, I'm going to lean to Navy here minus 1.5. Money's coming on Kansas State earlier in the afternoon, but at the end of the day, I don't like going against the military schools in bowl games. Typically, they play really well, especially with just how much they limit penalties and how efficiently they're able to move the chains on the ground. I think they're going to dominate time possession, and they should be able to get Perry in space where he can run for another 200-something yards. At the end of the day, this game should be close, but I think Navy will do whatever it can to keep the time possession, and I think Navy should be able to get the job done. Lean to Navy in that one. Moving on, you have Georgia State and Wyoming. I'm going to lean to Georgia State plus the 7.5. The main reason why, I just think I think Wyoming's offense is not good enough to be laying this big of a number. This team loves to run the ball, can't really throw the ball. Georgia State's offense has been pretty solid this season. I know their defense isn't great, but Wyoming is so one-dimensional in the ground game that unless they run for about 250, 300 yards, I just don't really see how they're going to cover this number. Georgia State has offense that is capable enough of scoring at least 20-something points in this game and is capable of some big plays. I think Georgia State should be able to keep this game relatively close. I think Wyoming will win, but I think this game should be within one possession, so lean to Georgia State plus the points on that one. And lastly, you have Texas versus Utah. I'm going to lean to Texas here plus 7.5. I think they actually have a shot at winning the game outright. I know a lot of money is coming on Utah, and it makes sense because of the better overall team. This game's still being played in Texas, and I still question Utah's motivation, as Utah went from potentially being in the college football playoff to potentially being in the Rose Bowl to going to the Alamo Bowl. I'm a bit concerned with the motivation here. They went from playing a top 4 team in the playoff to playing an unranked Texas team. I don't exactly think that's going to bode well for Utah. I think this game will be closer than people think. Ellinger's also a very solid quarterback, so I think he should be able to generate some big plays for the Longhorns. And Tom Herman as underdog is very underrated, as always. So for me, I'll personally lean to Texas plus the 7.5. Moving on, talking about the NBA, it's pretty tricky because there's a decent amount of injury report news that has not been announced yet. Harden is projected to play now, but it's not official. Capella is still questionable, so I'm not going to touch Houston unless I know that Capella will be playing as well. Dallas is also a bit of a concern because you don't know if Doncic is going to play. I would lean to Dallas, though, as I know Oklahoma City's been good at home, but Doncic has been fantastic this season, especially since he came back from injury, and Porzingis has still been very solid over the last month. I think Oklahoma State will be a bit overwhelmed by Dallas' ability to stretch the floor, and I think Dallas should be able to dominate on the boards as they normally have, and I will lean to the Mavericks in that one, but only if Doncic plays. If he does not, I have no interest in betting this specific number. Other than that, don't really have many other thoughts on the NBA card. For college basketball, don't really have many thoughts either in that game, as there's been some line movement in a decent amount of games. I don't think there's much value available. But the play today, once again, will be on the over 6 between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Montreal Canadiens, and that line is available at minus 115 on DraftKings. Other than that, that's going to do this installment of Scott's Selections here for Tuesday, December 31st, and good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.